I know it's been a while since I talked about the Owl House, but I never intended to stop reviewing it. Things just came up. So getting back to that now, finally, let's talk about the second episode, Witches Before Wizards, I think. Yeah, that makes sense, based on what the episode's about. I swear to God, I literally just looked up the title, so this wouldn't happen, but there you go. Taking place the next day, after Luce decides to stay in the Boiling Isles and learn to be a witch from the Owl Lady Ida, for those of you who forgot what the show is about, because I haven't talked about it in like 7,000 months. Luce jumps headfirst into her first day living in the Boiling Isles, expecting that she will just start learning magic immediately, but Ida seems pretty laissez-faire about the whole thing, very disinterested, even jokes, I'm assuming it was a joke, about not remembering who Luce is, and Luce takes this to mean that Ida's not serious about teaching her, but really Ida's just being realistic about the fact that it's going to be a while before any magic happens, if it even does, which we'll talk about in later reviews. I've watched ahead in this show. I'm completely caught up with it. By the way, if you guys want to get a discussion about it going somewhere, just saying I really like it, I'd like to talk about it. Because you got to realize Luce is motivated in all of this by the fantasy books she's read, which are Chosen One stories, and she was kind of thinking that being the only human here, someone who stumbled through a magic door to end up here, maybe she's a chosen one. Maybe she's been chosen for something special. But put simply, she hasn't been. I mean, she kind of has, and I'll talk about that in a second. But she hasn't been. She's not a chosen one. This is not a chosen one story. She wants it to be desperately, but it's just not. So it makes sense that she'd be way more enthusiastic about getting things going regarding her training than Ida would be. Ida doesn't even know how to train her. Again, like we'll talk about that in future episodes, but Ida doesn't actually know what she's doing at this point. Like, her advice in this episode is still good, but she doesn't know what she's doing. She doesn't know how to train a human to be a witch. It's just their approaches to this are so diametrically opposed, and Luce gets understandably discouraged when the first thing Ida has her do is earn her keep by working some deliveries. And this isn't even like a wax on, wax off kind of situation. She's literally just delivering potions to people because that's what Ida does on weekdays. She sells potions. And it doesn't help that once she gets out into the city or town, or however you would describe the main setting of the show, city, it would be a city, right? Doesn't matter. She realizes they're just people. Most of them are kind of dicks to anybody they don't know well and or specifically care about. They're just people. The Boiling Isles, they're just a place. They're, well, a collection of places, maybe? I don't know. The Boiling Isles is just a place, and while there are cool people everywhere and cool things about anywhere you'll ever go, most places, most of the time, are just kind of mundane, filled with just kind of mundane people. So this fantasy world has kind of already started to lose its luster for Luce, because she hasn't realized yet that even a fantasy world can't be fantastic all the time. But all this together creates sort of a perfect storm for a seeming wizard to take advantage of Luce. I'm going to spoil something right here. He's not actually a wizard. He's some demonic creature who uses puppetry combined with magical illusions to create scenarios in which he can trap people. And he seems to have some degree of mind-reading ability, because he's able to create these perfectly crafted scenarios for Luce without actually knowing hardly anything about her ahead of time. But under the guise of a wizard, he draws her in and gives her an enchanted map to an enchanted staff in an enchanted part of the forest, and makes her think she might be the Chosen One, because apparently the Chosen One will be a human. And even though Ida and King both, I mean, they laugh at her derisively, but in that way, they make it clear that this is a scam of some kind. These things don't just happen. Luz decides she has to try, and she keeps bumping into these people who become her, like, journeying party as she goes, who seem to reinforce the idea that there is a chosen one and she could only be here doing these things if that was her. Turns out, though, I can't remember what his name was, the demonic guy who was pretending to be the wizard, who's like this giant weird squid monster thing, very weird design. I did not like it. It creeped me the heck out. Apparently, he's one of Ida's competitors in the potion business, and he was expecting Ida to deliver the potion, the specific potion that he ordered, which Luz then delivered and set all this in motion. His real plan was to confront her and, I'm assuming, just straight up kill her, because he wanted her out of the way, in order to remove her as competition. So he cobbled together this plan to lure Ida out, specifically to, like, I guess it's supposed to be like his lair or something, so that he could remove her as his competition. He was literally just using Luz to get to Ida. So not only is she not a chosen one, but she is not even special enough to be the actual literal person that this guy was after. But in the end, that doesn't matter, because Luz decides in the moment, even as she's being tempted by a return to that illusory fantasy of being the chosen one, she decides to take what Ida had said to her up to this point to heart, that specifically the goal here in Luz's mind was to earn a magical staff. She decides that it would be better to earn her staff the right way, which Ida has said is the hard way, and she fights back against the illusions, and is even instrumental in fighting back against the creature and putting an end to this entire dangerous situation. And then the episode ends off with Ida, I would imagine because she realized she kind of pushed Luz to this by being herself mostly. She takes Luz flying and reassures her that there are fantastic things about this place, that you just have to look at it from a different perspective. And it's very interesting because you could take that as a metaphor for the entire show. Really, this is not a chosen one story. This is not trying to be a typical fantasy story. It's looking at fantasy from a different perspective. And, well, I do question whether or not that's entirely true, based on some of the developments we get later on. Like, there's a magic school. There's obviously something special about Luz because she can do magic despite not being a witch. That's entirely beside the point here. Luz was not chosen for this. She chose it herself. And that's so much more powerful. Nothing is going to make her special aside from working to become something special. And only she can choose to put in that work. She chooses herself. She is her own chosen one. This is her own chosen path, and she's going to have to keep choosing it over and over again at every point of hardship if she wants to become what she is set out to become. It's just such a cool message. It's not the kind of message you typically see in fantasy stories with a character who can do unknown types of magic and a magic school. So I like that it's here. It's a good message for kids, and they don't spoon-feed it to you. They just tell you the story and let you come to the conclusion yourself at the same time Luz does. It's very well handled. I'll tell you though, going back to revisit this episode after completely catching up with the show was a little weird because, like, it's not by much, and it's not like the entire show, but at certain aspects of the show, the tone kind of changes as the season goes on. I don't really know how to explain it. Hopefully going back and revisiting these older episodes and then working my way up to the more current ones for these reviews will help me articulate it better. But this episode just felt different from some of the newer ones in a way that I can't quite pin down yet. Maybe it's like early installment weirdness. Maybe it's because some of the voice actors in this episode still sound a little bit like they're trying to find the specific way they want to play the roles. I don't know. It's probably nothing. I'm probably just overthinking things. It was just weird. Going backwards in this show felt weird to me, if that makes sense. All that said, what did you think of the second ever episode of The Owl House? Though, to be fair, if you're in this show's fandom, you've probably thought literally everything you could possibly think about this episode by now, because I'm so behind in this. I am so behind the times when it comes to this show, but we're going to catch up. I promise. But anyway, what did you think of this episode? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below, or over on my Discord, link in the description. But either way, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later.